Welcome to the Resistering Show with your hosts, Tonia,
Trina,
Tiffany.
Join us as we uncover, discover, and recover together. Today's topic is gratitude.
Gratitude. Tonia, Tiffany, we're going to talk about gratitude today.
I'm very grateful.
Yes. In the past, I would have rolled my eyes years ago if you were telling me how many things you're grateful for, because I always saw the glass as half empty. And I felt like this world was hostile and all these bad things happened all the time. And over time, as I started my recovery journey, mind, body, spirit, I got to see that everything happens for me, not to me. And I also got to see that I'm actually responsible for most of what happens in my life. I am not a victim. I am a volunteer. It could be the way I respond to somebody. I might get a negative reaction because I don't realize that I'm harsh or I'm sarcastic or anything like that. And over the years, I've gotten to see my role. And also gratitude. So many little things to be grateful for. Just recently, we've been in the middle of this pandemic. It's something we've never experienced before, but I actually feel so many good things came out of this. I'm an introvert, type A. I feel a lot of pressure. It takes a lot for me to recharge. I really have to have a lot of self-care and a lot of time alone, especially if I'm in an environment that isn't one that I align with. So during the pandemic, it felt like there was no more threats that if I was talking to you, not you personally, but if I was talking to someone, they weren't able to throw out, let's get coffee. And then I would have to think, well, I have a boyfriend, I have a job, I have animals, I have all these other responsibilities. Do I have enough time and energy to have coffee with them? So what happened is it took all those responsibilities, all those meaningless errands, all that stuff I used to do in the past and stripped it down for me. And I say now, it used to be, I have to do this. And now I say, I get to do this. And I get to do hard stuff. Even when my kids were little, I am recovering from alcoholism. And when I got sober, I had to take a look at my life because I was a mess and I thought the world was terrible. And I started to go, you know what? I get to be homeroom mom. Who gets to do this? Because, it's not necessarily something I would choose to do if I didn't have children, but I get to make 100 water balloons. I get to be treasurer for the PTO and roll quarters at 2 a.m. for the spring fling. I get to do that. I get to be there when my children have health problems. I got to, homeschool them when things went rough. I got to do all these things. And it wasn't necessarily things that I wanted to do. And there were things I didn't even think I was strong enough to do, but I got to be the one to do that. I got to be their mother. I got to rescue 2 dogs, and I don't get the dogs that are easy. And I keep, having to learn lessons, but I get to be the one who gets to walk through the tough stuff with them. And there's also tons of good stuff. I had a major health crisis about 15 years ago, and that led to me becoming a health coach and getting immersed in what's going on in our food supply and what goes on with our body and its mind, body, spirit. So just so much gratitude for so many things I've been through. And I also learned that if I pay attention, things don't have to be so difficult before I finally wake up. So one of the things I used to do is I used busyness as a coping mechanism and as an addiction. And so if I'm busy 24/7, I don't have to sit with me. Well, the universe or my higher self or my spirit guides, because I don't think God does this to me. I personally think that my higher self decided a path. And when I get off of that path, it's like, oh, no, we decided this is what you want. So we're going to keep trying to get your attention until you wake up. God's like, stop here, don't stop here. I love you anyway. It's unconditional. But my higher self is like, let's go. So I use busyness to avoid my health issues and my children's health issues. And when you're running around like a crazy woman, you don't really take stock of what's going on. And so finally, both my children's health crashed, and it had to do with mold toxicity, but they were eventually going to crash, just a lot of different things. But they had a health crisis. I was forced to slow down. I was forced to stop. I was forced to sit home. So I actually had a little mini pandemic situation, about 10 years ago where I didn't leave the house that much. I was a caregiver. I was cooking and doctor's appointments and things like that. But I was the one that got to do that. If I had kept on drinking, I would have created problems, or I wouldn't have even been around, or I would have just made more of a mess. But I got to do this. A drunk like me got to be a mom who got to walk through things with them. But in that time, I learned to appreciate the simple little things. And during that time, Tiff, you were actually coming to visit me with the kids, and they would come for a couple weeks or a month at a time. And in the past, it would have been, oh my gosh, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. Because I had been home so much, when you were coming with the kids, all I could think of was, I can't wait till they get here. Like, I really appreciate, she's starting to cry, me too. I just really appreciated your company. And, it was taking that time to have gratitude. Tonia and her husband came for a week one year in Florida when I had a condo. And, I was lonely, and they showed up because I had gotten a divorce. My daughter was with her dad. My son had moved in with her dad, and she was with him for the summer. And they came to stay for a week, and they don't even know, I just appreciated that. I was grateful that they were there because it was lonely. It was hard, to be by myself and to not have the family I'd always dreamed of. So just so many things to be grateful for, that come out of hard things. All right. Anybody want to take over a little bit?
Well, geez, how do we follow that? I don't know. We're all tearing up and being extremely vulnerable and authentic. And I remember one year, we were all in high school, and we were in Jacksonville, Florida, and we had this huge blizzard. Do y'all remember that blizzard?
I do. I was stuck at a friend's house with her family, and
that was so funny. But we had no power, no heat, no anything. And we lived kind of out in the middle of the country. And at the time, it was around Christmas. And I remember going, how grateful I was that everything stopped in our house. There was no Christmas shopping. There was no busyness. My mother loved Christmas, and she over Christmased. And it was all of this stress that would always happen. And I remember that was probably one of the first times I had my eyes open to, oh my gosh, thank you. And I remember telling my family, this is awesome. Yes, we're all stuck together. Tonia and I, we have some ridiculous pictures of us. We had layered all of these coats on. Do you remember those pictures?
Yeah.
They're bad.
We look like bag ladies or something.
It was hilarious because we were in Jacksonville, Florida. It doesn't snow there. I mean, we had, I don't even remember how many inches of snow, but there was enough for us to go really play. But we ought to find those pictures and post them on Instagram once we get an Instagram account and know how to use it. But I just remember how ridiculous those pictures were. We really did. Do you remember how funny? Well, we had such a good time. And I know, I don't remember. I guess Trina was at somebody else's house, but Tonia and I remember how we got to just play and have fun. And because we couldn't drive anywhere, we were kind of just stuck, and we didn't have to engage in all of this madness. And again, I was a teenager, and I just remember that was probably the first time that I felt like the universe came together to create some peace. So when you were talking, that was one thing that I just wrote down. I wrote down a whole bunch of other things that I'm just in general grateful for. But again, as my eyes open more, and as my heart opens, and as I stand in my true power, and I truly stand in who I actually am, the more gratitude and gratefulness that I can have, and be truly thankful for all kinds of things. And one of those things was during that pandemic, my children were at home doing their online classes, which was really a lot of fun. So after that, I had decided that neither children were going to go back to public school. Ashley ended up being homeschooled, which is perfect. And then my son, we found a small private school for him. It best served him. My daughter flourished. My son flourished. And it was out of this crisis that I got to kind of like step out of that matrix and step out of all, like you said, Trina, like all of that busyness and all of the unnecessary outings and all of the stuff that we used to do just to keep ourselves busy. And I am an introvert, and I had to keep checking myself going, well, you know what? We still need to like be involved and engage with other people, whether it's on social media or it was just phone calls. So being grateful to be home, because I was working part-time and I wasn't able to go to work. And it was much better for my health not to do that, because I got a chance to recover. And my son, my daughter, my husband went every single day. He still works at least 5 days a week, if not 6 days a week. He still worked throughout the entire pandemic. So our income was steady through that entire pandemic, which is a huge blessing. I know a lot of people that their income really did get cut, but then there was others that were getting paid to be able to stay home, like Tonia and Trina, so that you could stay safe. So I was really, really grateful that I was in that position to where I could stay home with the children. And another thing was we actually moved during that period of time. And because of where we lived, our house sold like the same day that we put it on the market. Was like, oh my gosh. And then out of that, it sold so quickly that the houses that we were looking to purchase on the other end, there was some problems with 2 of the houses we had contracts with. And so we ended up moving in with my mom and my dad. And my mother is in a state of dementia. So it really meant a lot to my father. My sister Tonia was there as one of the caregivers. My children got to spend this really cool quality time with my parents, with their grandparents, and it just was a bonding. Now, I'm not gonna lie, 6 weeks in a household that was extremely active. I remember my dad and one of the caregivers, Susie, and even Tanya was like, what are we going to do when your family's gone? It's going to be so quiet. We have the dog Oreo, and I think they were grateful even just to have that liveliness, even though at times it was a little crazy. But it was 6 weeks, and I was so grateful that we had somewhere to go, that we weren't held up in some sort of hotel room or something like that. So I was extremely grateful to have a place to go with my family during that transition while we did find a house to purchase. And it's amazing how without the stress of, oh my gosh, where am I going to live? Which I know that's a big deal. And we were able to kind of slow down just a little bit and make a really, really good decision on the house that we were able to move into. And my daughter and I would sit around and we would actually visualize and think about what we wanted in the house we moved into. And we wanted privacy. We wanted light. We wanted freedom. We wanted a place where she could do her art that was all on one story, since we have bad knees. So we don't really need an upstairs. For us, we just didn't need an upstairs. And we found all of those qualities. And I love it that we just were patient enough. And again, I'm so grateful that we were able to have a place to stay at my parents' house. And we really got to reconnect with Tonia. She had just moved down, and it was just a really big deal.
Thanks, Tiffany. When you were talking too, we start to appreciate those people around us, where before, when we're so busy, we almost don't have time for the neighbor. We don't have time for our sister. We don't have time to chat. We don't have time to do those things that really are important. And now that we're all three not working, well, Tanya's working, she's a caregiver, but the 3 of us aren't working right now. And how lucky are we that we get to spend this time, take a chance, create a podcast, do some things, be creative, and spend this time together. Every once in a while I sit back and I go, wow, look at what we're doing, to actually appreciate it instead of getting caught up in, we got to do this and this and this and this. But also when you were talking, I was so grateful because throughout the whole pandemic, I had human interaction. And yes, I'm an introvert too with good people skills. So it takes me longer and I need, all that interaction. But by the end, when things started opening up, I had enough. I really needed to get back to my AA meetings in person. I really needed, a hug. I really needed a lot of that. And I had people around me all during the pandemic. I had a job almost the whole time, and I had clients that came in all the time. And I have a boyfriend, and he's over all the time. And my daughter was home, and I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of interaction. And I had my sisters. And so I was never lacking for touch or human connection, but it did start to wear on me. And I was so grateful. There are people that haven't been touched in a year and a half or haven't been out of their house. I mean, that is so horrible.
I can't even imagine that.
Right? Haven't left their house.
Yeah.
And then people in nursing homes and people in hospitals. And it really made me appreciate human connection. And there is no replacement for it. And even in my recovery program, we had Zoom meetings. And I'm so grateful people stepped up and set that in action. But I really knew I needed to get back to people when I was in a Zoom meeting and I was searching for the pause button because I was going to go change the laundry out or something. And I was like, oh, wait, this is live. But I was that disconnected by that time.
During the pandemic, I was still up in Pennsylvania, and you talk about being grateful, but I was grateful that I had the opportunity to, like you said, double my income. I had a lot more income coming in because I had only worked part-time.
You mean with unemployment?
With the pandemic unemployment assistance, yes. And my husband, kind of like Tiffany's husband, he's in the oil and gas industry up in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. So anybody looking for a job, there's still lots and lots of jobs up there right now. So that is a blessing. But I was home for 3 months and everything was closed down. And so I did get a little bit, nobody wanted you in their house. The stores were all closed. The restaurants were all closed. So I did feel a little bit of that alienation because he was working 50 to 70 hours a week. But what I was grateful for at that time is a feral cat had 4 kittens and 1 survived. And I brought the kitten into the house and she was only 6 weeks. So I got to spend time with her, and people, didn't have contact and were upset and, lonely and not seeing people and not touching people. And when I did start back to work, my first day, my boss, she's like, oh, air hug, I'm just like, really? So, it's still, everybody was so scared. So I was blessed that I could stay at home and be able to at least feel safe during that time. But the first time I really truly started hearing about gratitude was when I picked up a book from Wallace Wattles, and he had a whole entire chapter. I mean, everybody says, oh, thank you. I'm grateful. I'm happy you did this. Thank you. But that was the first time that I had ever really consciously made an effort. And if you're sick, and the only thing that feels good is a piece of your hair, thank you for your hair feeling good. So he was telling us to focus on that, and that's what I would focus on. And I did that for a long time, and the more it kind of snowballs, it's the more you use it and the more you start picking out the good things, the more you notice the good things and the more they come to you.
You mean like in my marriage, I'm divorced now, but I had one of my mentors told me I could thank my ex-husband for my growth. And I said, well, I would have never thought of that on my own. So yes, there's lots of ways to be grateful for a lot of different things, but it really was true. I had a lot of things that I needed to work on so that I could have freedom. My growth gave me freedom. In my growth, I had to search for boundaries, self-love, and self-esteem. And I'm very grateful for all the things that happened that brought me to my knees, brought me to my dark night of my soul, brought me to where I didn't think I could go on. And now, most of the time, I feel at ease in my own skin. And Tiffany and I had talked today, and Tonia and I had talked today about, those little voices creep back in sometimes, but I don't stay there anymore. I have tools to get out of it. When the voice starts telling me, Trina, just go get a job. This podcasting's ridiculous. Who do you think you are? And I'm like, well, I'm allowed to enjoy life. I'm actually happy right now. I am content. I feel great. I sit in my backyard and I, have the birds and the trees and the flowers, and I have a little garden, and I am content. I'm just like thrilled, and isn't that what it's about? But that voice comes in, that conditioned voice that says, you have to struggle. The other shoe's going to drop. And I was like, well, if something happens, then I'll deal with it. Why can't I be happy today? And I love this. When my daughter was in 7th grade, very competitive environment school. She's really bright, but she said to me, so wait a minute. So they're telling me I need to get good grades so I can get in a good college, so I can get a good job, so I can retire, and then I can be happy. She said, why can't I be happy now?
Awesome. Amen.
Right. So I'm happy right now. And I'm allowed to be happy. And I need to tell that voice that comes up that you're not the boss anymore. And then the quickest way out of that is gratitude. I mean, I love my car. I love my little house. I love living in Decatur. I love Tuesdays and Thursdays with my sisters. I love that we're building relationships with her kids. And, I love that I can go out to eat by myself. I don't have to cook, every single day. And I can read my book and I can be alone. And there's just a million things I'm grateful for. All right, who's next?
I have a question for Tonia. You were talking about the isolation during this pandemic because Trina and I both had other people. Like I said, my husband works a lot. Your husband works a lot. And then you got the kitty. And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but what tools did you use? Like, what were your strategies? Because there's still people out there that are isolated, that are lonely, that are afraid. And it may not even have anything to do with the pandemic. It could be a whole other situation, because I know personally, even dealing with depression from a very, very long time, that in and of itself is very isolating, because my head starts to go and not having the tools. So I'm just curious if there were specific things that you did. You talked about a book on gratitude and things like that, and then having the kitty. So I was just curious, like how did you do that? Because that's a big deal.
Well, during that time for me, it was calling my dad, and I would actually talk for an hour and a half on the phone.
Really? Like he could talk that long on the phone? That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's like, he'd be like, hey, Tonia, what are you doing? And I had the time to talk with him, and my sisters, I would call them and I'd be like, oh my gosh. And up there in Pennsylvania in March, it's here in the South, you're like, okay, it's 80 degrees. But no, up there, there's still snow. So occasionally it's 30 degrees. So you're not wanting to go outside. I do remember the first time we had a pretty day, it was like 70. And me and my husband, everybody was in the park, but everybody was making sure they were socially distanced. We were all wearing our masks, and everybody was still scared. But it was hard because you couldn't even get out to go to the parks. The parks were closed, and it was cold to boot. So you just stayed inside and, got a lot of Matlock TV watching because I had an antenna.
That's awesome.
Because we did streaming devices and we gave up our cable. So it's like you start looking at all the old shows on TV, catching up. But if that's what I did, and then I had the little kitty, and we became friends because it was just me and her for most of the day. You can't go outside. You can't can't, talk to your friends at their house or restaurants. And so it's just very, very hard. But for other people that don't have any of that don't have friends, maybe they're stuck in their house, and I guess there are services that you can call on the phone and stuff like that. But that's even hard to, I would imagine, I've never done that, to, be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm lonely, or, but those were my coping strategies. I just talked on the phone with whoever I could and just spent time with my kitty.
Thanks, Tonia. I laugh because during the pandemic was the first time I think my car ever stayed home for an entire day at a time. I mean, it was wild.
Like,
because
why do I still have gas from a month ago?
Right. And no traffic. So, I mean, I was really grateful for some of that. Tiff, you mentioned depression, and mental illness is a big thing, and it runs in our family. I know it runs in a lot of families. I know it's increased, especially in our youth nowadays. I'm grateful for a lot of the tools. And you talked about depression, and I don't know, Tonia, if you align with any mental illness, but I have anxiety. Tiffany's laughing. If you align with any mental illness, I'm on team anxiety. Okay? Anybody else on my team? Who's on the blue team?
Jeez,
Oh, wait. Depression is the blue team.
God. That's so funny. Ha, 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 ha.
On the red team. I'm anxiety.
Oh, wait, did I just snort?
But I always didn't know what was wrong with me, and I'm so grateful. But I remember when I finally had that realization that I have Tiffany's still laughing. I have generalized anxiety, and I found out, I do need a lot of self-care. I need to make sure I get sleep. I need to make sure what I'm eating is organic and clean, and I need to exercise, not just for my big booty. I need to exercise for my mental health. I need to be around people that are grateful. If I'm in a toxic environment, I get drained really quick, and then my immune system shuts down. So having generalized anxiety, it's almost like my prescription is meditation, prayer, AA meetings, putting my bare feet on the ground, getting sunlight. And Tonia talked about living up in Pennsylvania. It gets hard when you can't get out in the sun. But I have anxiety, so my depression looks different. I'm still busy. So you people think you're not depressed. You took a shower today. You got out of the house. But all of a sudden, things get very, very hard for me. So I didn't know if you guys had any awarenesses about anxiety or depression in your life.
So for me, it's always like the little bit of the blues. And this morning I recorded a video, and just wondering where this creeping of kind of the blues are coming from. And I used to get like seasonal affective disorder, and during the winter when there's not a lot of sun, and I can't even imagine being in a place like Tonia was talking about in Pennsylvania where it's dark, it's cold, you can't go outside. So I would get affected and kind of just feeling blue and just feeling not really like wanting to do anything. And the way I would combat that would be exercise, would be going places and having a good time and just letting loose. And sometimes they hear me laughing and it's like, whoo, she is going off. She's losing her mind. But I have this, it's called inappropriate laughter. When my son got diagnosed with epilepsy, I started laughing, and the neurologist is trying to keep talking as I'm laughing, and I'm going to start laughing now. It's just inappropriate. It's my body's way to deal with the stress. And I had to explain to the neurologist, I don't think it's funny. It's inappropriate laughter. And she's like, okay. And just kind of kept moving on. And so for me, I know those coping strategies. I really do have to laugh. I really do have to get silly. I really do have to just kind of like shake it all off in a way.
So you're grateful for those tools that you've learned and you've that's what you're grateful for, to implement those when you're feeling anxious. And
Yes. And in the exercise, when, I don't know, something happened where I got a couple of knee injuries and it like stopped me from being able to do my exercise. And then I just was like, well, if I can't run, then I should just do nothing. And I kind of got out of doing anything. And it's like, well, if I can't do this running, then, or if I can't do it for 30 minutes and I can't sweat, what is the point of me sweating a little bit and then having to take a shower? Because I really don't want to take a shower. And really, I don't want to do you know what I mean? Like, I just got myself into this wheel.
It's all black and white instead of being gray area.
Correct.
5 minutes is better than no minutes.
Right. But for me, I was like, oh gosh, if I sweat, then I'm going to have to take a shower. And then if I take a shower, then I can't do something else I want to do. So with having little children that were very demanding, I had to balance out, is it important to take a shower or is it important to sit and relax for a few minutes while they're napping? And I do remember a time where I had this woman over with her children and our kids were doing a play date. And I looked down and I start laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, I've shaved one leg. One leg got shaved. And she kind of looked at me really weird. But through my depressive episodes, I guess, I was always grateful to have people in my life that would make me laugh. So even the lady that was sitting there looking at me really funny and I'm laughing that, I only have one leg that's shaved. I thought it was funny. Other people may not think it was funny, but I would always try to find things that were funny, whether it was little quirky things that I would do or just seeing something that was funny, but being able just to laugh. So as a coping mechanism and being grateful to not take myself so seriously, I got to a point in my life where everything had to be so hard, so serious, and that's just not me. So I am grateful for that laughter.
Thanks, Tiff. Let me see your leg. Is it shaved?
They both are. Amazingly.
That's great. All that time during the pandemic.
Yes. But, the funny thing is why are we talking about shaving legs? But because I don't see very well, I do go outside. I'm like, dang it, I did miss a whole strip.
Right? Survivors.
That's right.
So that brings us back to gratitude. Gratitude is pretty much in everything. And it's my responsibility to use my tools. I know if I'm going down a path of negativity or anxiety, I have to reach out to other people. I have to get a mantra. I have to bring in some tools, laughter, exercise, move a muscle, change a thought. Like I have a toolbox now. I don't have to stay in any of that. And this has been a very interesting year. But, when you focus on gratitude, so many positive things have come out of this, so many special moments, so many, great relationships and opportunities to kind of slow down and reevaluate and appreciate the little things.
That concludes today's episode. We look forward to you joining us next time as we continue to uncover, discover, and recover.